Hello everyone, welcome to the session of Morphology of Flowering Plants, NCERT Exemplar Part 1. Disclaimer. Learning objective: to practice and master the core concept covered in the NCERT Exemplar through the problem solving. So today we are going to solve some of the NCERT questions. Okay, so these are some of the questions from the NCERT Exemplar multiple choice question. We will solve the first five questions, very short type question, short type question, and also the long type question. The total question will be 19. So this is the first question. This is the multiple choice question. Rearrange the following zone as seen in the root in the vertical section and choose the correct option. Right? This is this question is coming from the NCERT section 5.1. So what are the different zones? Let us see that. A. Root hair zone. B. Zone of meristem. C. Root cap zone. D. Zone of maturation. And E. Zone of elongation. So you have to correctly match, right? Correctly organize according to the vertical section, right? So the options are A, C, B, E, A, D. B option, B, C, E, A, D. C option, A, B, E, C, D. And D option, D, B, E, A, C. Let us see the answer of this question. So this was the question. The correct answer is C, B, E, A, D. C, B, E, A, D. Let us see that. So if you see the cross section, what is at the from lower? You have to start from the lower. So root cap, that is the root cap zone. Okay, this is the root cap zone and this is the C. Then we are having the region of meristematic activity, that is a zone of meristem. So it will be B. Then there is a region of elongation. So after the meristematic activity, there is an elongation of the cell. So here, this is the region of elongation, right? So that is represented by E. And then there is a root hair zone. So here you can see the root hair. These are the root hair zone, right? So it will come A here. A. And then region of last is the region of maturation or the zone of maturation, that is represented as D. So the correct sequence in the vertical section of the root is C, B, E, A, D according to this figure. Okay, let's move to the next question. The next question is here. In an inflorescence where flowers are born laterally in acropetal succession, the position of the youngest flower bud shall be. This question is coming from the NCERT section 5.4, right? So options are A, proximal, B, distal, C, intercalary, and D, anywhere. So let us see the answer of this question. This is the question. And the correct answer is B, distal end. Let us see the answer of this. So first of all, let us see what is the thinking process. The arrangement of flower on the main axis of the plant is called as inflorescence. So let us first of all understand what is inflorescence. Inflorescence is the group of flowers that is arranged on the main axis, right? Think of the different kind of flower arrangement. You are according to your syllabus, you have studied about the two different type, racemose and cymose. So how do the plants put up their flower to attract the pollinating agencies? This is that, like how they are arranging the flowers on the axis, right? So that more and more pollinators could visit to their flower. So in racemose inflorescence, younger flower are at the apex and lower flower means the older flowers are at the base and showing the acropetal succession. This is called as acropetal succession. That is young at the apex and the older one are at the base of the floral axis. So the youngest flower bud position is in the distal. It is in the distal position. So this is the one of the racemose inflorescence that we see in the case of Cassia fistula. So here the top is this is at the top there will be the youngest flower, and at the base you will see the older flower. So this youngest flower is the distal in position, and this is the proximal in position. The one that is at the base is called as proximal in position. Next question. The mature seed of the plant such as gram and peas possesses no endosperm. Okay. Why? Because this question is coming from the NCERT section 5.7 and the options are: these plants are not angiosperms. B. There is no double fertilization in them. C. Endosperm is not formed in them. D. Endosperm gets used up by the developing embryo during the seed development. Right? So let us see the answer of this question. This was our question. And the answer is D. D option is correct. Endosperm get used up by the developing embryo during the seed development, right? There is a development of the embryo. There is a development of the embryo, and for the development of the embryo, they require the nutrient. Where the nutrient is present? In the endosperm. So, in the such seed like gram and peas, all the endosperm get used up. Basically, in the dicot seeds, right? Let us see the solution. Gram peas are the dicot plants, belong to the angiosperm. Yes, they are having the two cotyledons, so they belong to the dicot type of plant, right? All angiosperm bear seeds, and you all know every angiospermic flower, okay, there is a process of reproduction and they form the seeds in them, inside the fruits. During the seed development, embryo needs nourishment, right? In the case of dicot, the embryo needs nourishment. So it is provided by endosperm, right? All the nutrition that the developing embryo requires, that comes from the endosperm. And it is product of the triple fusion, 3N ploidy. So endosperm provide nourishment to the developing embryo. And in the gram and peas, endosperm is used during the seed development, right? So in such type of seed, all the nourishment they get from the endosperm only, and here all the endosperm get used up. There is no nutrition left in the case of endosperm. So seed is non-endospermic in the mature stage. So when you will see at the mature stage, the seed is not having any endosperm, right? Next question. Roots developed from the parts of the plant other than radicle are called. Other than radicle are called. So this is our question. Let us see the option. A. Root, taproot. Taproot. B. Fibrous root. C. Adventitious roots. And D. Nodular root. Let us see the answer of this question. Roots developed from the parts of the plant other than radicle, right? Other than radicle, what is that called? It is called as adventitious roots. Yes, C option is correct. Adventitious, right? Let us see the explanation part. Seeds germinate into the plumule and radicle. When there is a germination, when there is a process of germination in the seeds, what you see? The plumule comes out, the radicle comes out first, and later on the plumule comes out. Radicle forms the root and the plumule forms the shoot system. Radicle forms the root system, and this part comes first. plant parts can be from root as needed, because the establishment of the seedling is very, very important, and that get established through the roots only. Now, other roots are called as adventitious root. You see some of the plants that from the nodal region, some root hairs comes out. Okay. So those are called as adventitious roots. You can see from some of the plants that their stem give rise to the adventitious root, their leaves, even the leaves give rise to the adventitious, right? They branch and grow from the nodes and internodes. And other options are incorrect. Why? Because taproot grow from the radical direct. This is the type of root that is formed from the radical only. So that cannot be the option. Fibrous roots are the thin branches from the stem base. In the case of monocot, how the fibrous roots are formed? They also give the radical. And that is the primary root. After the establishment of the plant, what happened? This taproot get degenerated. And from the base of the stem, many roots emerges out. That forms the fibrous. Okay, that forms the fibrous. And that is found in the monocots. Nodular roots have the swellings called as nodules. So nodule formation is that is in the case of roots, and that is not the adventitious roots. And that nodular roots help in the process of nitrogen. Next question. Venation is a term used to describe the pattern of arrangement of. This is the NCERT section 5.3. Okay. So A, floral organ. B, flower in inflorescence. C, veins and veinlets in the lamina. And D, all of them. Right? So let us see the answer. So this was our question. Venation is the term used to describe the pattern of arrangement of veins and the veinlets in a lamina. You see, there is a lamina, that is the green part of the leaf, and you see that there is a midrib, and from the midrib many veins comes out, and after the veins there is veinlets also. So that is called as venation. In the case of dicot, we are having the reticulate type of venation, and in the case of monocot, we are having the parallel venation, right? And this is one of the difference between the dicot and monocot also. So let us see the explanation part of this question. The veins are the parts of the leaf which possesses the vascular tissue. And what these veins are having inside them? They are having the vascular tissue. This vascular tissue is made up of the xylem and phloem part. They are meant for the conduction of water, minerals and food to and fro in the leaf, right? So these xylem and phloem, these conductive tissue or the vascular tissue, they help in the conduction of water. They help in the transportation of water. Not only the water, in the water, some minerals are also get dissolved. So that is also transported with the help of xylem. Now, the food gets synthesized in the leaf, and that should be transported to the every part that do not make their own food, like roots, stem, right? They are not making their own food, even the flowers. So, but they require the food material. So that is transported from the green leaves via phloem part. So the special arrangement of the veins in a leaf is called as venation, right? So here you can see the venation in leaves, reticulate venation in the case of dicot, and parallel venation in the case of monocot. So this is the very short answer type of question. The first question is here. Roots obtain oxygen from air in the soil for respiration. In the absence of deficiency of O2, the root growth is restricted or completely stopped. If the oxygen is not reaching to the root, there will be no growth, right? And what happened? How do the plants grow in marshland or the swamps, obtain their O2 required for the root respiration? So this is a common thing, like, but they are asking that some of the plant that grows in the marshland and the swamp area. So how they get oxygen? So let us see the answer part of this question. This question is coming from the NCERT section 5.1. And so how to think about this question? Every plant cell require oxygen for the cell respiration, or you can say the simple cellular respiration. And air between the soil particle is used by the roots. Inside the soil, two things are present: water and oxygen. Water is present in the form of capillary water. Only the capillary water present in the soil is available to the roots. Okay, capillary water. In between the soil particles, some water molecules are there. So that is called as capillary water, and that is only available for the root. Okay. Now, in between these soil particles, some oxygen gas are also present. So that is taken by the roots. That is also taken by the root hairs. So the plant is a waterlogged condition, developed other ways to get O2. Now think about the swamp and the marshy land where all the water is present. In between the soil particle, what is present? Water. No oxygen is there. So how they will get the oxygen? The question is this, right? So they are giving a condition for the waterlog condition. Roots in marshy areas become negatively geotropic. Very important phenomena. You have seen that root always grow downward toward the gravity. Positive geotropic. That is called as positive geotropic phenomena. That we see in the case of normal root. But here the condition is different. This plant is growing in the marshy land, in the swamp, where no oxygen is present inside the soil. So the root it makes its way negative to the geotropic. Okay, that is why this root is called as negative geotropic, as it moves upward direction, right? And they comes out in the form of pneumatophores. Now these pneumatophores are having small holes, that is the lenticels, through which they can take the oxygen from the air, and that oxygen is there for the process of respiration of the, right? Very important. And not only this, they are taking some hygroscopic water that is present in the air, right? That is present in the air. They take that water not from the swampy soil, because that is having a lot of salt in it, right? Next question. Write the floral formula for a flower which is bisexual, actinomorphic, sepal 5, twisted estivation, petals 5, valvate estivation, stamen 6, ovary tricarpellary, syncarpus, superior ovary, trilocular with exile classification. So they have given you the condition. Now you have to write the floral formula, right? Let us see the answer. This was our question. And so floral formula is a formula by which we can describe the flower by using some symbol. Yes, you all know that. We use some symbol, right? To represent the petals, sepals, androecium, gynoecium, right? So the various symbols describing the above given condition are as follows. Bisexual. They have given that it is a bisexual flower. So for bisexual, you will use this symbol. Actinomorphic. For actinomorphic, this symbol you will. Sepals 5. 5 sepals. So you will write K5. K5. Calyx 5. Twisted estivation. Petals 5. C5. We will see twisted estivation. Androecium, see, stamen, and all the stamen unitedly it is called as androecium. So how? Petals 5 and stamen 6. So we will write A6. Carpellary. Ovaries tricarpellary. So you will write B3. And syncarpus. Syncarpus means all the ovary are fused together. They are fused together. So you will write G3 in bracket. Trilocular. So here you can see the trilocular axile placentation. So this is the way to represent the axile placentation. And here it becomes the formula. Bisexual, actinomorphic, K5, C5, K5, C5, A6 and G3, right? Next question. Very short answer type question. Next question is, in Opuntia, the stem is modified into a flattened green structure to perform the function of heat. That is the photosynthesis. Cite some other examples of the modification of the plant parts for the purpose of photosynthesis. So one condition they have given in the case of Opuntia, a type of cactus. Now they are asking some other examples in the plant, right? That you see the modification for the process of photosynthesis. So let us see the answer. Photosynthesis is performed by the green parts of the plant, mainly leaves. You all know that which part of the plant perform the process of photosynthesis? All the green parts. And mainly in the green part, what comes? Leaves, right? Think of the plant in which the function is performed by other plant part except leaf. Okay? It has to be green and contain chlorophyll pigment. So there are some other parts of the plant that can become green and they can do the process of photosynthesis except leaf. So Opuntia has spines instead of leaves and no leaf photosynthesis. And you all know that why this leaves is modified into spines, because to minimize the water, because Opuntia grows in a desert condition, xeric condition. Okay, less availability of water. So to conserve water, and minimize the rate of transpiration, the leaves transforms into the form of spines in the case of Opuntia. Now, stem perform photosynthesis with chlorophyll and that is called as phylloclade. Here, what you see in some of the plants, the stem got modified in the form of phylloclade. Phylloclade means the stem is doing the process of leaf function, right? Because they also contain the chlorophyll, they are green in color and they can do the process of photosynthesis. So that structure is called as phylloclade, right? So this is one of the phylloclade structure that we see in the case of Trapa. Here you can see they are having the photosynthetic roots. The root is doing the process of photosynthesis because they have to do more and more process of photosynthesis, right? Asparagus has leaf-like structure for the photosynthesis. Scales leaves contain these modified stems. So these are some other examples that you see that other parts than the leaf, they are also involved in the process of photosynthesis. Assimilatory roots in Trapa. See, assimilatory roots mean the one that do the process of assimilation, right? Assimilatory roots in Trapa and Tinospora perform the photosynthesis. So these two examples where you see the roots are doing the process of photosynthesis and these roots grow above soil and they do contain the chlorophyll. Next question is, in swampy areas like the Sundarbans in the West Bengal, plants bear special kinds of roots. Plants bear special kinds of root, and that is called. Let us see the answer. So there are many plants that can grow in the swamp areas like water lily, cypress tree, Sundarbans have the helophytic mangrove forest. Okay. So what feature we see in the case of mangrove? Pneumatophores, right? So in swampy areas like Sundarban is one of the example of the swampy area. Okay. And there that is present in the West Bengal. So there you see that roots are becoming pneumatophores because they have to take the oxygen from the air. They have to absorb the water from the air. So the roots turn upward, showing the negative geotropic phenomena, right? So roots are the organ meant for the absorption of water and minerals from the soil. Generally, this is the general description. But in some other exceptionally, cells of the roots require O2 to respire. For the process of respiration, they require oxygen. But in swampy areas, soil does not have air. No nitrogen dioxide is available to them, right? So what they do? They need oxygen. They require nitrogen. So what they do? In such cases, roots comes out of the soil, show the negative geotropism and breathe after coming in contact with the air. So they take the oxygen from the air through the pneumatophores, right? And one of the plants of the mangroves example is Rhizophora. Very important. You must remember one of the species name, that is Rhizophora. So such roots are called as pneumatophores, respiratory roots. So this is one of the example of a figure that is showing the pneumatophores. Next question. In aquatic plants like Pistia eichhornia, leaves and roots are found near. Where the leaves and roots are found? Like these are some of the aquatic plants, Pistia and eichhornia. So let us see the answer. Pistia and eichhornia, in these plants, these are the floating plants, aquatic plants, and they are floating on the surface of water. So the stem is like a runner where it branches to form the leaves at the apex and roots below, right? They are runner. That at the nodal region, you see that they are giving rise the branches. And from the lower region of this stem, the roots are emerging out. So the roots are found near the surface of water, so as both the plants are hydrophytes. You can see the roots at the surface of water in both the cases. So here you can see the Wolffia, Wolffia, then you can see the lemma, then you can see the eichhornia. In Hindi, we call it as the jalkumbi, and this is the Pistia. Next question. Give two examples of roots that develop from the different parts of the angiospermic plant other than the radicle. Let us see the answer. Two examples of the roots that develop from the different parts of the angiospermic plant. So in banyan tree, prop roots develop from the lower nodes of the stem of the banyan tree, because the branches of the banyan tree are so strong and they are having a lot of weight, right? So they need support. So what happened? The banyan tree gave rise to prop roots, and this prop roots reaches to the ground, and that provides support to the big branches of the banyan tree. They grow downward and touch the soil. Prop roots are meant for support. So what they are doing? They are providing support to the big branches of the banyan tree. Here you can see prop roots. These are the roots that is coming from this branch. This branch. and it is providing support to this particular branch. It is nothing to do with the main trunk of the region, right? Next you see the stilt root in the case of sugarcane. You can see the nodes and internode from the nodal region. The roots comes out and that provides support so that this sugarcane can stand erect and do the maximum photosynthesis, right? Always the plant want to stand erect, and this stilt root coming from the nodal region, they go to the nearby soil and provide support so that this plant can stand erect. So in sugarcane, the stilt root arises from the lower nodes of the stem and enter the soil to provide strength to the plant, right? So this is one of the example, sugarcane, where we see the stilt root, like the roots emerging from the lower nodal region, okay? Lower nodal region, not the upper one. So these protect the plant against the wind because these are the weak plants, right? So wind can damage and it can droop down. So, but these stilt root hold the plant firmly and make them stand erect even in the high wind speed, right? So this is the next question. The essential functions of the roots are anchorage and absorption of water and minerals in the terrestrial plant. What functions are associated with the roots of aquatic plants? How are the roots of the aquatic plants and the terrestrial plants different? Let us see the answer of this question. The essential functions of the roots are anchorage and absorption of water and mineral in the terrestrial plant. What functions are associated with the roots of aquatic plants? So let us think about it. Aquatic plant grow where the plenty of water is available, right? You see, where the lot of water is there, the aquatic plant grow there only. So they may be free floating. Now, the aquatic plants are of different type. You must have seen that some plants are freely floating on the surface. Some plants are submerged. They are present deep inside the water, and some plants are rooted. They are rooted downward, but they are present at the surface. Okay. So that can be free floating, that can be submerged, that can be attached floating or attached emergent hydrophyte. So aquatic plants are of different categories. Now their root possesses several aquatic adaptations. Now, if we talking about the roots, then there is a lot of adaptation we see in the case of aquatic plants. What are those? Let us see about and let us think about. Roots have branched network for anchorage and absorption. The root is having a lot of branching so that they can anchorage. They can get anchorage to the soil. They can get a more and more absorption of water and minerals that is present there. So aquatic plants roots show modification from the normal function. What is that? In trapa, in Hindi we call it as singhada. Tinospora, roots are green for the photosynthesis. See, this is the modification. Trapa. In Tinospora, the roots become green in color and they are helping in the process of photosynthesis. Though they have leaves, it doesn't mean that trapa is not having the leaves. They do have the leaves, but still they require more and more food material, right? So that is helped by the roots of the trapa. In Juicea, roots inflate with air for flotation and exchange of gases. They are floating. Roots are inflated with their air with air for flotation and for gases exchange. Now we have to talk about the difference between the roots of the aquatic plants and terrestrial plants. What are the difference? Let us see in the aquatic plant. Roots may be absent or thin adventitious roots. Like we see in case of Wolffia, this is one of the aquatic plant. No roots are present. Rootless plant. Terrestrial plant, roots are well developed with root cap and hairs. Okay? Because they have to develop deep into the soil, right? So to avoid the friction and the root do not get damaged, the root tip is covered with the root cap. Is covered with the root cap, right? Okay. Next point. Vascular strands poorly develop. In aquatic plants, if you see the vascular tissue, they are not well developed because the plant is totally living in the water. So they can take the water from the any surface, their body surface, right? But in the case of terrestrial plant, the vascular bundles are well developed because they can only take the water from the soil and they can transport from roots to the upper parts of the plant shoot system via the xylem and phloem. Okay, that is meant for the transportation of food and water both. For water, there is xylem, and for the food material, that is phloem. Next point, modified for the photosynthesis and gaseous exchange. Some of the aquatic plant, you see that they are doing the process of photosynthesis and they are also helping in the gaseous exchange. Now, in the terrestrial plant, they are meant for the anchorage and absorption of nutrients. Anchorage and absorption of nutrients. Next question, short answer type. Draw the diagrams of a typical monocot and dicot leaves to show their venation pattern. Okay, venation pattern. This question is from section 5. So venation is the pattern of distribution of veins and veinlets in the lamina of leaf, right? You see? And its pattern is different in the monocot and dicot. Okay, there are different patterns. So what is that? Here you can see. In the case of monocot, the veins run parallel to each other within the lamina. So this is the green part of the leaf, the green blade, or you can say it is a blade. Okay, whole blade. That is the lamina, the green color. And in that you see that the veins are running parallel, right? So that is called as parallel venation. Now in case of dicot, what you see? Veins and the veinlets form the network, irregular network, right? And that is called as reticulate type of venation. In the figure you can see the veins and the veinlets are parallel. But here, these are the veins that coming from the midrib, and later on after that you will see the network like region in between these two veins, right? So that is the reticulate venation. If you want to see the examples, then for the parallel venation, you see such type of pattern of parallel venation in the case of grasses, wheat, maize, mostly in the case of monocot plant. In the case of monocot plant, you see such type of venation. Now, reticulate venation, where you see in the case of hibiscus plant, China rose, commonly it is called as China rose, bean, pear, okay, mostly you see that this reticulate type of venation in the case of dicot plant, dicot. Next question. A typical angiosperm flower consists of 4 floral parts. Give the names of the floral parts and their arrangement sequentially. Let us see the answer of this question. This is coming from the NCERT section 5.5. The 4 floral parts of a typical angiospermic flowers are: the first one, calyx. Now, calyx is the outermost whorl of flower containing sepals. And I've already told you the sepals. These are the unit. These are the unit. And all the sepals unitedly it is called as calyx. And that makes the outermost whorl of the flower. Outermost whorl. Okay? Made up of sepals and unitedly it is called as calyx. Right? Green and protective at bud stage. Now these sepals or calyx, you see they are green in color. When it is in the form of bud, the flower is in the form of bud, all the sepals are closed and encloses the inner floral whorls. So they are providing protection to the inner floral whorls. And due to the green in color, they can do the process of photosynthesis also. This is an additional function of the sepal. Next floral whorl is the corolla. Made up of petals that attract insects. Now, what is the function of these petals? Okay, the petals are unit and all the petals unitedly it is called as corolla. They are variously colored. Some are red petals, some are white petals, pink petals, purple, blue. Why they are having such different colors? So that these colors can be easily visualized by the insect and they get attracted toward them. They can visit to them and do the process of pollination there. And this pollination is very, very important for the sexual reproduction. So indirectly, they are bringing this reproduction, right? Usually bright in color. This we have already discussed. So here you can see the flower, okay? The outer whorl that is called as sepal, unit of calyx. The sepal is the unit of calyx. And all the sepals unitedly it is called as calyx. Now the next whorl that is petal, unit of corolla, not the calyx, unit of corolla, petals. Right? Now, male reproductive part made up of stamen and rutium, that is the male reproductive part. And it contains the filament and anther with pollen. They contain. Now, this, if you see one stamen, it is having a stalk-like structure that is called as filament. And this filament is attached to the thalamus part. And its distal end is having anther. And inside the anther, there is pollen chamber. Inside the pollen chamber, what is developed? Pollen grains. Next whorl, and that is the fourth innermost whorl, that is gynoecium. So female reproductive part with the carpels. So all the carpels unitedly, it is called as the gynoecium. Now if you see the single carpel, it is made up of stigma, style and ovary. Say this. This is the stigma part and there is a stalk-like structure that is called as style, and the lower basal part, okay, that is called as ovary. And inside the ovary, many ovules are present, right? So these three parts, stigma, style and ovary, that makes the female reproductive organ called as carpels, right? Next question. Given below are the few floral formula of some well-known plants. Floral formula, right? So draw the floral diagram for these formula. With the help of these floral formula, you can draw the floral diagram as well, right? So we are having the three floral formula, first, second and third. This question is coming from the NCERT section 5.9. Okay, Chemie technical description of the family, that particular section, right? Let us see the answer of this question. Floral formula, first one, It is actinomorphic. Okay, actinomorphic. Many plane of symmetry is there. K5, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 sepals and they are all united because it is written in the bracket. Corolla 5 and all united because it is again written in bracket. So here you can see the petals. The petals are here 5 and they are united. And A5 means androeciums are 5 and it should be like link. C should link with A with this type of bar, right? So that is showing the epipetalous condition because androecium is attached to the petals, right? Gynoecium too and they are united. So here you can see one gynoecium and this is the second gynoecium and you can see the septa in between, right? So this is the floral diagram and floral formula of the Solanaceae family. Next, floral formula and you can see this floral diagram. Percentage sign, that is the zygomorphic because it is only one plane of axis that divide the flower into two equal halves. K5 means 5 sepals are there. C1 plus 2 plus 2 because they are having one standard, two wings and two lower petals that fuse together, that is called as keel. So this is the keel one, right? Now here you can see a very important phenomena. A 9 plus 1 and 9 is present in the bracket. So here you can see only one stamen is represented here, whereas the 9 stamen that are unitedly present, it is represented here, right? G1, only one gynoecium is there. So it is G1. This is the floral formula and floral diagram of the family Fabaceae. Next floral formula. Actinomorphic, bisexual, K5, C5, A5 plus 5, G5, okay, G5 and it is superior ovary, so it is underlined. So here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A. Then we are having C5, right? And A5 plus 5. Two groups. Okay. G5. Inside you can see the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 locules are there. Next question, and this is a long answer type of question. Distinguish between the families Fabaceae, Solanaceae, Liliaceae on the basis of gynoecium characteristic with figures. Also with write economic importance of any one of the above family. So let us see the answer. The families mainly differ from each other in their reproductive structure. Mostly you see the difference in their reproductive structure. So try to differentiate the above families on the basis of androecium and gynoecium. The difference between the three families on the basis of the characteristic of the gynoeciums are as follows. So here you can see gynoecium characteristic, there is the carpels and there is the ovary. In the case of Fabaceae, monocarpellary ovary free and that is single in. Number is only 1. In the case of Solanaceae, bicarpellary and syncarpous. Two carpels are there, but they are fused together. So it is syncarpous condition. Liliaceae, tricarpellary. 3 carpels are there and all the 3 carpels are again fused together. That is the syncarpous condition. Ovary, if you see the ovary, it is superior in position and unilocular because only one locule is there. In case of Solanaceae, okay, bicarpellary it was, so bilocular superior ovary. Okay, but in the case of tomato, you can see 2 to 4 locular in tomato. Liliaceae, superior ovary. The other things, different ovules. Now in the case of Fabaceae, margin in 2 alternate rows. ovules, you can see the margin in two alternate rows. So what types of placentation will be there? Marginal placentation. Now see in the case of Solanaceae, many in each locule. In one locule, because there are many locules, right? 2 to 4 bicarpellary. So 2 locules will be there and many ovules are present in each locule. So that is showing the axile type of placentation. Liliaceae, trilocular, 3 locules are there and too many ovules in each locules. Okay. Style, it is bent and single in the case of Fabaceae. Solanaceae, simple type. Okay. And in the case of Liliaceae, simple but may be united. Simple but may be united. Next feature. Stigma. Stigma in the case of Fabaceae is simple and capitate. Solanaceae simple and lobes. And Liliaceae free or fused trilocular. Now in the placentation, if you talk about the placentation, too many ovules in each locule, that is axile placentation. This is also showing the same axile placentation as we see in the case of Solanaceae. So Liliaceae is also having the axile placentation. So here you can see the floral formula. Fabaceae bracteate, zygomorphic, A5, C1 plus 2 plus 2, A1 plus 9, and G underline means superior 1. So this is the diagram of the gynoecium. This is the ovary, this is the style, and this is the stigma part. In the case of Solanaceae, bracteate, actinomorphic, K5, and all are united. C5, free, corolla are free, androecium 5 and G2, and they are superior. So this is the diagram of the gynoecium, stigma, style, and ovary. You can see Liliaceae, bracteate, actinomorphic, perianth. Here they found perianth, not the calyx and corolla. They are fused together. In the flower where you see the perianth, it means that the calyx and corolla got fused. So P3 plus 3, 2 whorls of the perianth. Androecium 3 plus 3, and gynoecium, you can see this is the tricarpellary ovary showing the axile placentation. This is the figure of the pistil in the case of Liliaceae. Now this is the gynoecium characteristic floral diagram. You can see one locule and there is one ovule. This is the bicarpellary. 2 carpels are there. One carpel is this and another is this. So 2 locules, and inside the locule you can see many ovules are there, right? Liliaceae, trilocular. You can see the 3 locules. 1, 2, 3. 3 locules. And each locules can have 2 to many ovules. So again, it is showing the axile placentation. Examples, garlic, onion, and colchicum in the case of Fabaceae. Solanaceae, potato, tomato, brinjal, dhatura. In Liliaceae, all pulses. Okay, garlic, onion, and colchicum should be in the case of Liliaceae, but here for the Fabaceae, all pulses, sunham, lupine, indigo, and cassia should be in the Fabaceae family. Now, economic importance of Fabaceae. Plants of this family are the source of pulses and edible oil. What is the economic importance of Fabaceae? We get pulses and edible oil from this family. Dyes is extracted from the indigofera, that is called as neem, which is the plant of this particular family. It serves as a source of various other products like fibers, sunham, factor, susbania and trifolium, ornamental plant, lupine, and the seed pea. And even the sweet pea, you get the vegetables. And medicine, that is mullathi. That also belong to this Fabaceae family. Next question. Describe various stem modification associated with the food storage, climbing, and protection. This is coming from the section 5.2. Thinking process. Stem is the aerial part of the plant bearing nodes, internodes, buds, flower, fruits, and seeds. Yes, these are the parts that is attached to the stem region, right? So under the special condition, the stem gets modified for the storage, protection, and climbing. But due to some of the condition, right, the stem get modified. In some of the plant, you see that they are meant for the storage, some for the protection, and some are meant for the climbing as well. Search for the different stem forms and modified stem with the varied function. So this is the thinking process. Okay. Now, what are the different types of modification? Various stem modification are as follows here. Rhizome. Stem grows underground, horizontally store food as nodes and buds for the aerial shoots like ginger, banana, and turmeric. Okay. The stem, underground stem, it is running horizontally. It is running horizontally to the ground surface, and they store food material in it. You can see the ginger. They are also having the nodes and internodes. And that is why we call this rhizome as a stem, because you cannot say stem to that particular part which is not having nodes and internodes. And this underground part is again having the nodes and internodes, right? That is why we say this rhizome as a stem. And they store food material. Examples of rhizome are ginger, banana, and turmeric. Another example, corm. You can see this colocasia. Stem is underground, grows vertically, and bears nodes as well as internodes. You can see the brown strip that is showing the node, right? In between the two brown strip, there is an internode. And from the nodal region, they give rise branching. Some daughter corm comes out from that. And you can detach it, place it in the another soil part, and that will give you the new plant, right? So this is the corm. Stem is underground, grow vertically, and bears nodes as well as the internodes. Corm of colocasia. This is the example of corm. Bulb. This is the case in the case the stem becomes underground. Here also the stem is underground. The internode is shortened and in such a way that the leaves are condensed, and these leaves become thick and fleshy and store food material in it. So the stem is there, and the stem part gives rise a very fleshy leaves. These fleshy leaves are so condensed, so compact that it forms a bulb-like structure that we see in the case of onion, right? And these fleshy leaves store a lot of food material, and that is why we consume this bulb as our food in the form of vegetable. Next, tuber. This is also a special kind of stem modification which arise at the tips of special narrow underground branches. They have nodes, internodes, apical buds, scale leaves in the form of ridge. So you can see a lot of eyes. That eyes on the potato tuber. That eye on the potato tuber is nothing. It is what? It is nodal region. And the region between the two eyes, that is called as internode, right? So that is why we consider this tuber as a underground stem. The best example is potato, right? Here also, they store a lot of food material in it. That's why we consume this potato in our food. Stem tendrils. These are found in the cucurbits and grapevine, right? The axillary buds become elongated and coil to twine and around the support. So these plants are weak and they need support so that they can stand erect and get the maximum sunlight for the process of photosynthesis. So here they form the spring-like structure that is called as stem tendrils. Here the stem modified into the form of tendrils. The examples are cucurbits and grapevine. Another, stem thorns present in the leaf axil or the stem apex for the climbing or defense in the case of Duranta and Calamus. And they reduce the process of transpiration. They reduces the water loss. So these are some of the modifications, right? So this is all about today's session. Okay. Thank you very much for attending today's session. Rest of the question we will solve tomorrow. We will meet again tomorrow. Okay. So goodbye and take care.